Deputy chief used racial slurs toward the two black male occupants of the vehicle. No idea he's a law enforcement officer. They felt he may be intoxicated. We're at the Deland Police Department in Florida, and we've got a big story that they're trying to keep quiet. It seems there was a recent altercation between three people, and one of those people was Deputy Chief Adam Kisthardt of the Deland Police Department. There were no other witnesses and no video of this altercation. Both sides made serious allegations, and two people were arrested. The deputy chief was not one of them, even though serious allegations had been made against him. When I read the statement of the deputy chief and the reports, it raised alarms. I was able to get in contact with and interview the two people who were arrested, and their version of events was not only much different than that of the deputy chief's, but it made a hell of a lot more sense. Both of them have been in fear since this incident, specifically in fear of the Deland police, and they're afraid to have their names, their images, and even their voices made public. So I agreed not to play any video or audio, but I think it's very important that this story and their story be heard by you. So Deputy Chief Adam Kisthardt of the Deland Police Department claims he was involved in an altercation earlier this month in the city of Deland at a Chipotle restaurant. He claims, I've got his 5-page, ridiculously written statement here, in my opinion. I'm going to tell you what he claims happened. There are some allegations from the other side of racial slurs and more. So I want you to hear this whole story, and I want to see what you think. The public should know about this. I'm being told from sources inside the Deland Police Department that they're trying to keep this incident quiet. They don't want people to know about this. And after I've read it and seen the things for myself, I can see why. Two people were arrested. Two 19-year-olds were arrested. The other half of this altercation, charges were very quickly dropped. No process by the state attorney's office. Likely for the same reasons, for the same things that I see in here. Inconsistencies, things that just don't make sense. Words by the deputy chief of the Deland Police Department. Now, also in this report, it seems suspicious to me that there is no mention of Kisthardt being a member of law enforcement whatsoever. The report is written as if the victim, Adam Kisthardt, in the incident was just an average citizen. If you read his written statement, you would think the same. If you read the police report, the charging affidavit for the two 19-year-olds that were arrested, you would think the same. The two 19-year-olds that were arrested, also no idea that this was a member of law enforcement. I think they didn't want that to get out there. I think, my opinion, perhaps because of Adam Kisthardt's behavior during that incident. So the deputy chief claims that he went to the restaurant just to pick up some food, right? He went to pick up some food, he pulled into a parking spot, and then a car pulled in next to him on his passenger side. He said the deputy chief said the car parked 6 inches away. 6 inches. That's a small gap. You can't get out 6 inches. If you're parked next to another car, good luck getting out of your car. But still, somehow, he said the driver was able to get out of that 6-inch little gap. Deputy chief says he was just lowering his window to politely ask the person, hey, please don't bump my car, but it was too late. He claims the person bumped his car, but immediately started saying, F you, I'm going to beat your ass. F you, I'm going to beat your ass. That, to me, doesn't make any sense. Why would someone do that? Why would they bump your car and immediately start going at you? If you've done nothing, you've said nothing, why would they go at you? But who knows? There's crazy people out there, right? They said that this person who hit the car went into the Chipotle the whole time saying, F you, making threats, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to do this and that. He claimed there was a passenger in the car too, of the suspect car. We'll call it the suspect car. Really the victims, in my opinion, who remained in the car the entire time. Deputy chief says the person went in, got a bag of food, and came right back out. Deputy chief stayed right there. Deputy chief claims they said nothing, that he said nothing. But the other people kept saying, F you, this and that, this and that. They got back in their car. The deputy chief now claims he's in fear, so he backs away to another parking spot. He claims they move to and start throwing things at him. He said he's in a well-rounded fear. He's in fear for his life, fear for his safety. But yet he still got out of his car at some point. Deputy chief got out of his car at some point. If he's in a well-rounded fear, I don't know why he would get out of the car instead of just driving away. I don't know why he wouldn't identify himself as law enforcement. It doesn't make any sense. If he's in such fear and this incident is getting so heated and so dangerous and scary, according to the deputy chief, wouldn't you ID yourself as law enforcement? Hey, police, you need to stop there. You know, whatever, do something. But for some reason, he chose not to do that. And he chose instead of leaving the situation, to re-engage, to stay in this situation that he was so afraid of. He claims the car backed up, opened the door into his car again, came over and parked by him and opened it into it again intentionally to intentionally damage his car again. This is what the deputy chief says. This doesn't make any sense, right? It's not making any sense to me. But this is what he claims. And then he says they start throwing Slurpees at him. From inside the car, they start throwing Slurpees at him, calling him all sorts of names, this and that. Doesn't make any sense. And eventually they drive off, right? Now, the confidential sources who gave me this information from within the Deland Police Department alleged that there could have been racial slurs used in this incident. Now, I will say that the two people that were arrested are two black males. One of the victims, you know, they made mention they are boyfriend and boyfriend. I guess that's how I would put it. They're boyfriend and boyfriend, and they're two black males. They say this statement written by the deputy chief, Adam Kisthardt, is much, much different from the reality, the version of events that actually took place. They say what happened is deputy chief and they pulled in to parking spots at the same time, almost the same time. Deputy chief got there first, then they pulled in right next to each other. These two guys are out here door dashing. They're on a timer. Keep that in mind. They're on a timer from DoorDash. Once they pick up the order, they have a certain amount of time before it has to be delivered, or the order gets canceled and they lose money. So they don't have time to play around. Keep that in mind here. They said the driver of the car got out and his door did lightly touch the deputy chief's car. I should mention the deputy chief was off duty, right? And he was in a BMW. He's a personally owned BMW with Pennsylvania tags, which ironically, deputy chief seems to own several vehicles all registered in Pennsylvania where he's from, but he's lived in Florida for a long time. I imagine he has a Florida license too, which requires Florida residents are required to change their vehicle registrations to Florida if they reside in Florida. I believe the deputy chief does reside in Florida. Let me just interject real quick. But we know that white BMW, it has Pennsylvania tags. Adam Kisthardt also owns a Jeep just like this that also has Pennsylvania tags. That Jeep, I believe, is a 2022. And he was sworn in at the Deland Police Department in 2020. So we can assume he's been a Florida resident since at least 2020. So is he still registering vehicles out of another state? And people at the department says he has several different cars. They say they believe all of them have Pennsylvania tags. This is, of course, unlawful, and citizens are often issued citations for failing to register vehicles in the state they reside in the time required. Sometimes people break those laws for various reasons like financial benefits, maybe lower insurance costs, maybe cheaper registration rates. I don't know, but the deputy chief not setting a good example. Why does he have all these vehicles registered in Pennsylvania? I don't know. That's a different story. But he's in his BMW. He's off duty. Their door just lightly touched his car. Now, they say immediately they apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Now, remember the deputy chief said they immediately start saying, F you, I'm going to harm you. I'm going to do this and that. Now, I spoke to both of them, and respectfully, I find that hard to believe. I find it hard for them to be frightening. I'll just say that very soft-spoken, I will say. And I can't picture them aggressively yelling. And if they did, I can't picture it being very intimidating. Respectfully, right? I'm just saying. I'm just putting it out there because it's relevant here. And the deputy chief, as soon as they touched the door, apologized because he did make a mistake. He said it was just a very light touch to his car, that it didn't do any damage, but he immediately started apologizing. They said deputy chief immediately started yelling, berating them, calling names, yelling, swearing. They said they were in great fear. Only the driver went out. He went into the restaurant to pick up the DoorDash order. He continued, the deputy chief walked out and around the other people's car, yelling at the passenger, telling the passenger to get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the car. Passenger's afraid. He's not going to get out of the car. He's afraid of this guy. And, you know, he's the passenger of the car. What's he got to do with it anyway? So the driver comes back out, and they're in fear. The driver and the passenger, they're in fear. They have no idea why, in their words, this crazy white guy is yelling at them. He's so mad over something that didn't cause any damage. The driver comes out, deputy chief allegedly, continues yelling at them. So the driver gets in his car to drive away. Deputy chief moves his car to behind their car, and when they move their car, they back it up. They end up being right next to each other again. The deputy chief gets out of the car again. This is their allegations, and comes over. He's yelling at them again. They do have to open their car door again because I guess they dropped their DoorDash order, so they had to pick it up again. Whether or not deputy chief's car was bumped a second time, I don't know. It's kind of irrelevant. But they claim that the deputy chief used racial slurs at this point toward the two black male occupants of the vehicle, told them go smoke dope somewhere else. Allegedly, they claim that's what the deputy chief said to them. They said he was yelling, he was swearing, racial slurs, and go smoke dope somewhere else. They said the deputy chief came to the open window, maybe at some point got parts of his body into their vehicle, maybe reaching for one of the occupants. At that time, they say they had 3 Slurpees in the car, and they started hitting him with Slurpees to get him away because that's all they had with them, just Slurpees. Deputy chief picked up Slurpees and threw them back at the occupants of this car. Keep in mind, this is a 30-year law enforcement veteran. Where is the disengagement? Where is where is anything you would expect from a law enforcement officer? But yet, again, he's not identifying himself as a law enforcement officer. And why? Why is he not identifying himself as a law enforcement officer? His statement, he says he's in fear, right? He had plenty of opportunity to drive away, to get out of the situation and no longer be in fear. He didn't do that. He could have ID'd himself as a law enforcement officer. He said when the two males moved their car, he claims that they intentionally tried to pin him between the 2 cars and crush his legs. Deputy chief claims they had tried to intentionally do that. The other 2 males, who I'm calling the victims, say absolutely not. That's ridiculous. They moved their car. They ended up close to his car because how they positioned the vehicles when they moved. But that's ridiculous. They didn't have time to play around. They wanted to get out of there. Now, they say they felt that this white male, unknown to them, just some crazy guy, to them, no idea he's a law enforcement officer, they felt he may be intoxicated or maybe he might have been drinking. They said, this is their allegations, they said they felt this way because of his actions, because of his demeanor, and they described to me a cherry red appearance that you might see in some Caucasian people when overstimulated, drinking or whatever. And you can picture that. You get that cherry red look in your face. So one of the 2, from their observations, one of the 2 things, maybe alcohol, maybe rage, I don't know. But for some reason, still, never ID'd him. He said he was in such fear. If he didn't shuffle away, he would have been crushed by the 2 vehicles. You would think if he hadn't done it yet, at this point, he would ID himself as law enforcement. What do you suppose will happen if you try to crush a cop between 2 vehicles? What is a cop probably going to do? Are they going to run away? No, probably pew, 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 pew. There's going to be holes in the windshield. But he didn't even ID himself as a law enforcement officer. He writes this statement. Reading this statement, I mean, he's using exclamation points and everything too. The statement that the deputy chief wrote looks like a statement written by an average citizen who's never written a statement before. He wants these 2 arrested. It's interesting that the deputy chief even, for some reason, adds a point in here. At no time did I use foul language, threaten them, or do anything inappropriate. All I wanted to do was tell them to put more space between our vehicles. Why would you just openly say that? Why would you volunteer that information? That, to me, my opinion, sounds like a kid who isn't allowed to have any cookies. He just ate all of the cookies, and he ran to his mom and said, I didn't eat any cookies, because he knows his mom is going to find the empty cookie pack, and he's trying to get ahead of it. And in his mind, in the little kid's mind, with that way of thinking, well, mom will already know he didn't do it, right? Nothing to see here. That's what I get from that. That's the vibe I get there. At another point in the statement, Deputy Chief Adam Kisthardt says he just was trying to ID the 2 people. Trying to ID them. Why would just a regular citizen have any right to ID 2 other people? Again, he never ID'd himself as law enforcement. And these people never suspected he was law enforcement and would have been shocked. And they were shocked to later learn that he's not only law enforcement, but the deputy chief of the Deland Police Department, the number 2 in charge, in command. Shocking to them. Deputy chief says he left, they left the area, he left the area. Then he drove here to the Deland Police Department for some reason. After getting food, right? After getting food, drove back here to the Deland Police Department where he said he wanted to make a report. I don't know why he didn't call somebody over there, why he drove here. Now, at that point, he claimed that he was on duty, that he had been at work, and he left here, he left work only to go get some food at the restaurant, to bring it back here and eat while he continues working. So he's an out of uniform in a plain vehicle, in a personal vehicle, on duty cop, on duty deputy chief at that time. And still, he never even thought to identify himself as law enforcement, to call for another unit. If all this is true, what he's saying, this doesn't make any sense. I want to hear what you have to say about this, but this doesn't make any sense. So, of course, the deputy chief says all these things, so all the king's horses and all the king's men come rushing out. They put their vehicle on a hot list, just based on the deputy chief's words, throwing Slurpees and making threats and all of this, and bumping his car. For that, it gets put on a hot list, meaning any cop that gets behind that car, it's going to pop up and they're going to do a felony stop, guns drawn, it's going to be, get out, lay on the ground, all that. So they get all the king's horses, all the king's men. The helicopter comes up. They do, in fact, get behind the vehicle. They do order them out at gunpoint, all this. Park the vehicle. They arrest both of them. One of them got a couple felonies and some misdemeanors. The other one got some misdemeanors, aggravated assault, criminal mischief, all these things. Said he did all this damage to the deputy chief's personally owned vehicle, all these claims. And then the traffic stop happened in a Wendy's parking lot, private property, and the police told him, no, we have to tow your car. Nobody can come get it. We're towing the car. They don't have to do that. They wanted to do that. That's anger because the deputy chief, get them every way you can, because the deputy chief was angry. I think, personal opinion, deputy chief was angry, and it all initiated because his car got hit by another door. The others say they only lightly bumped it, apologized. This potentially enraged the deputy chief and triggered everything. So they took the two to jail. The deputy chief, nowhere in his statement makes any, you can't tell from reading this that he's a member of law enforcement. Like I said, the report or his written statement right here, which I'm putting up on the screen, you can't tell that he's a cop. Actually, I would think reading this statement that this is not a cop. The way this is written, it's kind of like a story that he's telling here. And it's a messed up story indeed. Like I said, very quickly, the state attorney's office dropped the charges on these two people arrested allegedly because of inconsistencies with the victim, Adam Kisthardt's statements and stories. Now, in my opinion, the two actual victims in this story, the two 19-year-olds who were arrested with charges dropped, they are in fear. They're in fear from all this. They were very frightened. That night, they said they were terrified. They didn't know why this guy was so crazy. They were terrified. They wanted to get the hell out of there. It doesn't make sense to me that someone, let's say someone opens their door into my car, and suddenly we have no connection to each other. We've never met. We've never had words. But they come up into a parking lot, open the door into my car, and immediately start screaming at me out of nowhere, unprovoked. That just doesn't make any sense. And allegedly, that's how this whole thing began. But the two stories are very different. Now, the two 19-year-olds, they did tell police their version of events. They told police that Kisthardt did these things, that he came into the car grabbing at them, and that's why they hit him with Slurpees, which that would be burglary with battery. But the police didn't want to hear the stories. They didn't want to hear it. I want to put a little more emphasis on this real quick. Deputy Chief Adam Kisthardt told Officer Dumont a story that doesn't make sense to me, doesn't make sense to a logical person, and didn't make sense to the state attorney's office. But because he is who he is, based only on his words with no video, no witnesses, he got what he wanted. Not only did they go to jail, but it cost taxpayers quite a bit, with cops from 3 agencies searching for this car, the helicopter searching, and then a dramatic felony traffic stop. But Dumont wrote in his own report the statements and allegations by the other two people. Just like the deputy chief, no witnesses, no video, but they made allegations of felony crimes against them by Adam Kisthardt. He defined in his own report allegations of burglary with battery, alleged by the other two. Yet the deputy chief was not arrested, no charges were filed. So he chose to believe one side. And you know why he made the choice that he made. No charges were filed on Kisthardt, but these two were taken to jail. And conveniently, there were no witnesses. There was no video. I did go back to the restaurant myself. I talked to somebody who was there that night. They didn't see anything. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't find out that the incident even took place until police came back looking for video. And they said there was no video. It didn't, where it happened, it wasn't captured on video. That's super unfortunate. Now, also at some point, the two males say that late into this situation, after it had already evolved, Kisthardt started recording them with a cell phone. There's no mention of that anywhere. In any reports, there's no mention of any of that video whatsoever. In my interview with the victims, I asked them why they think the deputy chief never mentioned the video. They quickly said because the video would show the deputy chief at a 10 while they were unbothered. And I find all of this odd. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to say my opinion. There's a reason why he was not ID'd as law enforcement, ever. And a reason why they want to keep this quiet. I believe Deputy Chief knew that his actions would not go over very well if it were to be on the news that a member of law enforcement acted the way he acted. And again, the racial slurs, the allegations that these people allege that he did in fact use racial slurs against them. And all sorts of other things that he yelled and screamed at them. So this would not go over well. I believe this is why he did not ID himself as law enforcement. I believe this is why he did not call for help. He did not call police while he was there. I believe he drove away, started thinking about it. Perhaps, this is my opinion. Oh crap, what if these other two call police? It comes out, got my tag, find out it's me. Crap, I better get ahead of this. Hey mom, I didn't eat any cookies. Just like that part in the statement. It's very fishy to me. You let me know what you think. Now, I'll add in here that these two that were arrested, they have no local history that I can find. Just this incident. And they're both 19 years old. I've also requested some records, some documents from the Deland Police Department in reference to the incident. Specifically, I'm looking for some body-worn camera. The portion of the officer's interview with the victim, the deputy chief, when this first started. So far, I'm having a pretty hard time obtaining it. It's my opinion they're trying to keep me from getting it. I believe probably there is no body cam footage of that interview with Deputy Chief, the victim, because he's the Deputy Chief. Now, if that, I could be wrong, but if that's the case, it's a policy violation because the Deland Police Department's policy states that they must have their camera activated when talking to citizens, when taking a complaint, when handling a call. That BWC, that body-worn camera, has to be activated. Now, were they playing favoritism because it's the deputy chief? Or maybe there is video there. And if there is video there, I want to see it. I want to see it. You want to see it. Because I think that'll be very telling. Maybe even more telling than this ridiculous statement written by the deputy chief. When you look at this, when you read this, 30-year law enforcement veteran. Keep that in mind. Now, stay tuned. I've got another story coming about how the Deland Police Department recently got a firearm into the hands of a juvenile, and no arrests were made by any of the adults that allowed access to that firearm. Now, if it was you and one of your kids or some juvenile gets a hold of a firearm that you have left accessible, or the firearm that you are responsible for or responsible to make sure is not accessible to children, but a child gets their hands on it, they're going to charge you. They're going to take you to jail. That happened here. I've got the report, and wait till you hear that one. That one's coming up soon too. Share your thoughts. Let me know what you think. This is absolutely insane. Like I said, they don't want me knowing about this because they don't want you knowing about this. And I have a feeling they're going to be pretty upset that we all know. That's my suspicion, that some members of administration at this department may not even know about this incident yet. That's how quiet they're trying to keep it. However, there were cops working that night, right? So some people knew about it. And then word gets around within the department. They heard that racial slurs had been used, and they didn't hear this from the other two victims. I don't know who they heard it from, but they heard that. That upset them. They said, this can't happen. Previously, the Deland Police Department lost a captain for racial things. That was not too long ago. That was a couple years ago. A captain I forget if he was forced to resign, he fired, whatever it was.
A captain with the Deland Police Department is fired after he was accused of making racist, sexist, and homophobic comments to other officers.
Some of the specifics are too offensive to say on TV, but other co-workers here at the department listed a long array of derogatory terms allegedly said by that former captain. A sergeant filed a report about the comments he said were used by former Captain Frank Williams. That sergeant said Williams was at a crime scene when he used derogatory terms for black people who were standing nearby. The report goes on to say Williams used derogatory terms for homosexuals, women, and others. After a thorough internal affairs investigation, the city manager and police chief have determined that Captain Francisco Williams's employment can no longer continue with the city. There were a total of 15 allegations made against the former captain. According to that report, 11 of them were substantiated.
So share your thoughts. There's definitely more to come. More to come on this. More to come on the firearm with the juvenile incident. Absolutely crazy. This place is a mess. We've been trying to get their administration to listen to their people, to listen to the people. Just do things the right way. That's it. Stop focusing on who the squeaky wheel is. Stop focusing on retaliation. Just do what's right. Handle business. Share your thoughts. Let me know what you think.